How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Orf. My name is Philip, and today we have yet another tier list. Come on. Today we're going to be switching it up just a little bit because we are looking at the full album discography of the one and only Mr. Ed Sheeran. Now, when it's time for a tier list, I always like to add in a few extra things. So not only are we looking at all the albums, but I also threw in a couple of the more notable EPs from Ed's earlier years. I won't spend as much time looking at these EPs, but to get started, why don't we look at Loose Change? So Loose Change is a glimpse into Ed Sheeran's earlier work, and I believe it has the most songs of any of his earlier works. You know, I didn't want to include every single EP that he made, but for this video, Loose Change stands a little bit more on its own than the others. And obviously on its own, this wouldn't be the record that would skyrocket Ed Sheeran into the popularity that he sees these days, but as an opening record, I think it is perfectly satisfactory. I'm actually going to put this in the C category. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but as a debut record, it's definitely something that can get some people interested enough to stick around for his full-length album. Also with Loose Change, I threw in the number 5 collaborations project, and I'm gonna be straight up, yeah, this thing is rough. I appreciate that as a starting artist, you know, you want to collaborate with a lot of people, and I love the idea of that. However, in the finished product, if there are any good moments on this thing, they do not even remotely relate to anything else going on the record. It's like being on the Chopped TV show where they give you all those crazy ingredients, but instead of actually like trying to make a cohesive dish with them, you just kind of throw them all into a bowl and say, here it is. That's the food. There it is. I'm not here to roast anything, but if I'm going to be honest, number 5 really just doesn't hit any mark with me, and I'm kind of glad that this type of stuff sort of ended. And no offense to the individual artists that were collaborating on this thing, I feel like some of their music could be good on their own rather than in the collaboration on this type of record. Just doesn't work. Fail. Alright, so the meat and potatoes of the video, studio albums. Let's go ahead and start with Plus. So as a matter of fact, the reason that it's called Plus and sort of kicked off this mathematics album thing that Ed was doing for a long time is because when he was songwriting, he would usually use a plus instead of a normal bullet point to signify that the song was complete. I guess there's meaning in that? I don't know. Anyway, this is the record that obviously kicked Ed Sheeran straight into the big leagues. And it's emotional and it's cheesy and it's teenage heartthrobby, definitely. And while I don't think the album as a whole is his best of all time by any means, I think there's a lot of tracks on here that still kind of hold up pretty well today. I wouldn't really consider it overrated by any means, especially for the time that it was released. And the slight blend of other genres here and there, while it sounds corny at times, I don't think it strays too far away from the album's core sound. So you are kind of left with this sort of cohesive experience that I think works well enough to put this album in the B category. For me, this is clearly one step up from the likes of Loose Change, and because of that I think I should rank it accordingly. So that's Plus. Moving on to Multiply. If Plus is the thing that put Ed Sheeran on the map, then Multiply is, you know, X marks the spot. So Multiply would see the release of huge hits such as Thinking Out Loud and Sing, co-produced by Pharrell Williams. But once you get past all the big radio hits to see what else this album has to offer, I actually see something that is quite defined and quite organic. Most of these albums are going to be a little cheesy in some way, but with Multiply, I actually get a lot of themes that are, you know, a little bit more down to earth than just the lovey-dovey stuff that we saw in earlier records, minus Thinking Out Loud. And God, did that song get so ruined. Oh my god. A song like Thinking Out Loud had been done like 30 times before this came out, at least. But the idea with Multiply is the songs that are less popular on here, like Nina, like I'm a Mess, like A Fire Love, and stuff like that. All of those songs are actually very fitting to the lyrics and the message that they're giving simultaneously. I think this album shows some effort. It's very clear that he wasn't just redoing Plus in a different coat of paint just to tackle the same themes that he already has multiple times before. So for that reason, I'm actually going to put Multiply in the A category. If we're not acknowledging how radio completely destroyed a couple of the songs off of this album, listening to it from front to back actually provides a really nice experience, one of Ed Sheeran's best in my eyes. Okay, now moving on to this one. Oh my god, this one. If I hear Shape of You one more time, oh my god. Now, this is what I like to call Ed Sheeran's like a world traveler album, because apparently a lot of it was written and recorded when Ed Sheeran was on hiatus and traveling all over the world to other countries like Ghana and the United States. And you can definitely hear that in the record. He's trying to cover as many bases as possible with all of the cultural influences. But to me, they're kind of just shoehorned in there. You know, I've heard a lot of people be not very fond of songs like Galway Girl and Nancy Mulligan because, yeah, well, it sounds a little Irish. It's not quite as traditional as it could have been, especially since Ed Sheeran himself has Irish roots. You know, I get trying to blend other cultures with pop, but I don't think it's done very tastefully in Divide. And if we're talking about the tracks that have less of a cultural influence, such as Perfect and Eraser and stuff like that, to me, in general, it feels a bit like a step backwards from Multiply. It kind of feels like after Sing and Thinking Out Loud, Ed kind of wanted to take some time to just be himself. He took some years off before releasing Divide. And the finished product here kind of seems like he's resting on his laurels a little bit. You know, it's really just that low-risk album that not many people will truly loathe, but I kind of I kind of find it hard to really draw any strong opinion towards this album, either negative or positive. This is a C for me. And don't tell me that it has his most popular song on it. I don't care about that. I don't care about Shape of You. Again, I'm looking at the whole album. Usually the songs you hear on the radio are the most simple ones that have been done so many times already. Anyway, not here to rant. Let's go ahead and move on to, oh, well, I said I'm not here to rant, and now I'm about to do the number 6 collaborations project. Yeah, like Khaled is cool and Skrillex is cool, but this is one of the most by-the-number cookie-cutter albums that I've ever heard. Every song on here is so painfully average at best that as a full record, each song sort of like siphons the quality from each other until you're left with just this pile of crap. That's pretty much all I can say for number 6. I like the idea of collaboration in music, like who doesn't, but the finished product here offers nothing to me. Truly nothing. Let's move on to Equals. And I kind of expected Subtract to come after Divide, but he did Equals and then he did whatever. Equals suffers from a lot of the same problems that I see on Divide. Very radio friendly, very appealing to the masses, but nothing really that's gonna stick with me. If there's anything on here that sounds unique, it's generally gonna be more watered down. One song on here that I truly love is Tides. Not because it's overly complex or anything, it's just a great sounding tune that I think anybody can jump into and enjoy. Other than that though, you have very watered down influences from R&B and this disco revivalism that's going on right now. I'm gonna put Equals in D because other than Tides and maybe one or two other songs on here, again, there's really nothing here for me. All right, I'm moving on to Subtract. This is where we'll change gears a little bit because Subtract was definitely Ed Sheeran going back to a more organic sound and not really worrying about commercial success. I mean, he stated that a lot when talking about this album. It's not really meant to appeal to the masses, right? This album was not structured, supposedly, to be a big radio hit, even though you have songs on here like Eyes Closed, which sounds like it's really fucking trying to get on the radio. As a whole, though, I think Subtract kind of does some of the things that Ed Sheeran was trying to do in the past a little bit better. Like when you hear a song like The Hills of Aberfeldy, you got to admit a song like that is much better at including Scottish or Irish influence into a pop track rather than Galway Girl. It's a little more raw, it's a little more organic. I think it hits closer to home for Ed Sheeran, and I think it's a sound that really he wants to create rather than something that some production company wanted him to create. Subtract can get a little boring at times, but I think for the most part, Ed's kind of going more towards what he really wanted to do, and for that reason I'm going to put this in the B category. In fact, if I had to pick between Plus and Subtract, I actually think I like Subtract a little bit better. It is reflective of his age, it's reflective of what's going on in his life, and I think it's done so in a way that doesn't sound so forced, you know? So that's Subtract, and we're moving on to the most recent release by Ed Sheeran, Autumn Variations. This album cover is so cheesy, like, oh my god. You remember that stuff I told you about just now with Subtract, about how he was kind of moving in this direction that I liked? Autumn Variations, I think, does something similar, but still, again, takes a tiny step backwards. I think Autumn Variations and Subtract are very similar in my eyes. Both of them are a little bit more chill. Both of them don't seem like they're trying to be extremely pop poppy. And both of them really are just Ed Sheeran talking about things that he feels strongly about, not things that will get him plays on the radio or Spotify. However, again, the quality of tracks on Subtract are a little bit more organic in my eyes. I think his ideas came together a little bit more when you're talking about listening to an album from front to back in Subtract rather than Autumn Variations. So it's nothing horrible, but again, I think it's just pretty dang mid. I'm probably just gonna put this one in the C category. And yeah, that's it. You know what? Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. God, Divide is like right between a C and a D. It's like right in the middle. We should probably end this before I start going crazy. Anyway, that's my Ed Sheeran tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your opinions on this. What Ed Sheeran albums do you think are best, worst? Throw it in the comments for me. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But other than that, this has been Orf with an Ed Sheeran album tier list, plus a few bonus EPs. With that said, I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. Hard.